feeling fresh after last night. So we're going to talk about the future of the record label. Obviously, we've been through a lot of change over the last couple of years, or the last sort of 10 years, really, to be honest. And the role of a record label has evolved. You know, we've got the whole DIY culture, as well as the major labels and the indies that are really forcing their way through at the moment. So I guess maybe if you guys just introduce yourself first. Fred, do you want to start?
My name is Fred van Drooning. Worked as a label manager for Caroline International and used to work for years for Universal and EMI and retail before.
I'm Lara Baker from AIM. I head up our marketing and events. AIM is the organisation that looks after independent record labels in the UK, and we're also a member of the worldwide independent network WIN.
I'm Alison Lamb. I'm Alison Lamb, sorry. I work for an independent record label called So Recordings.
I'm Taka Suzuki, co-founder of the Big Parade conference in Tokyo, and also I'm EX Universal Music Japan, head of the digital strategy.
Thank you. I'm Liz Stokes from Record of the Day, the same person I was yesterday. Just.
It's a little more tired.
Yes, okay, let's begin. I know, Lara, you've got some opinions on this, on what a record label is now, what its kind of role is. You've been with AIM for a fair while, so you've seen the indie sector kind of evolve. So what is the role of a record label?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to the majors, but the indie sector has changed a huge amount just in the last sort of 6 or 7 years. I think when AIM was started 15 years ago, its members were all record companies, and in quite a traditional sense, they were companies with offices, with staff, with a team. And then we went through a sort of phase of a lot of change in our membership in the mid-2000s, where this sort of DIY culture took off, and all of a sudden we found that lots of bands and artists were joining AIM, and they were self-releasing, and they were sort of going the DIY route. But what we found with those labels is they tend to sort of join AIM, use the facilities for about a year or so, and then when it came time to renew, they're not really doing that much anymore, because the DIY route is really, really hard. It does really help to have a team of experienced people involved in what you're doing. So a lot of the sort of DIY part of our membership has drifted away, and now we're left with sort of a lot of proper established companies again, but they're doing more than just the label stuff. They're doing publishing, they're doing management, they're really diversified in terms of what they look like as a company.
And is that something that you guys have seen as well? Have you seen the sort of role of the record label change recently?
Yeah, I mean, from a kind of an indie perspective, you know, we have quite small bands, small deals, that are all kind of malleable to what a band needs exactly. But yeah, we'd definitely be looking to kind of support every aspect of a band and their release. So we would be looking for publishing, we'd be looking to support them live-wise. So I think it's definitely a case of being an all-round team, I think.
Japanese record label is, I think, the more traditional, because the 80% of the revenue is come from still CD. So the still major record label has a bargaining power to retailer, and also there are only a small way to promote songs via television. Like there are only 5 terrestrial TV station in Japan. So we also, a major label, also have a really good relationship with the TV programs. But last year, the more kind of a subscription service has launched in Japan, finally. So maybe if the music distribution will become more digitally, so the kind of the dynamics will change.
Definitely changed. I mean, I used to work at a major label first for years as well, at Universal and also the EMI, and a lot of stuff changed at those labels already. I mean, staff changed, several positions changed, press was all being done outdoors, just through PR companies instead of being done by themselves anymore. So that all changed as well. Sales teams changed completely because the digital market took over. So that's one of the major changes that happened also to the music industry on a major level. And what I experienced now since the last almost 2.5 years with working with a label services company as sort of an independent, there is a reason why Universal started Caroline.
I think one of the things that we kind of have to think about when we're thinking about the future of record labels is obviously the deal and the deal is at the center of a record label. And one of the things that keeps coming up, and it's been a buzzword for a fair while, is transparency and transparency within the deal. Kind of how are we moving forward with transparency? Are artists having more pulling power? Are they demanding more? Do they need to understand more? Kind of where are we going with that kind of argument at the moment?
I think I'd just definitely say for sure that artists are more savvy now. They're very aware of what needs to happen and how, you know, a contract would affect their career going forwards. And I think, yeah, it's just a case of everybody being more aware. I think, you know, managements have to be aware, artists have to be aware, and they always have to be striving to push their career forwards. So I think that ties in with the type of deal a band would want to sign. So.
I think transparency in the digital age is so important, and I think the independents are really leading by example in this area. I think it's been about a good 2 years ago now, Win launched the Fair Digital Deals Declaration, which thousands of labels around the world have signed up to. And what that pledges to artists is that labels who sign it will be transparent in the recording contracts as to what percentages they're giving, what revenue they're paying through, and that they will be as fair as possible in their deals. And that was signed by thousands of labels a couple of years ago, and it's interesting to see just this week how Warner and Sony have now announced that they're going to be the sort of equity and the revenue that they've taken from the digital services, should they sell those stakes, they will be paying things through to artists, as they should be.
Yeah. And Taka, in your sort of in your region, in your area, I think transparency issues come to the front because of digital, and you know your area is still massively controlled by CDs. It's, like you said, it's 80%. So is this kind of transparency argument happening in your region?
Yeah, there is already happening because we have really many missing artists for a subscription service. Like most of the established artists don't want to be their cut repertoire into the subscription service. So especially freemium, like A services. And so maybe transparency is really also important for to convince their repertoire into a subscription service and how much they can earn the money from the service. But I also think that the education is also the necessary things because the people in the industry, so educational level is really not so same. So transparency means a number is really important, but the number makes sometimes a negative effect. So I think the transparency and education is really most priority needed.
And what do artists need to feel comfortable in a deal now? Like, while we're talking about transparency, what is it that an artist is looking for to know that they're in a good deal and they're getting what they wanted? Nobody knows. Okay, this is a bad thing.
Well, I mean, the artists, what they want to know about their deal is what's going to happen with their royalties, what's going to happen with their music. In general, just what are the plans, and the transparency is really important in that perspective too. I mean, that's it's what we, for instance, most of the time do with local deals is we make really custom deals now instead of just having this is one deal here and one deal there. No, it's customized on the artist itself, so they know what they get, and that's what they definitely want to have. They want to know what's in it for them and what's going to happen with their music.
Yeah, I think customization is so important, and I know kind of transparency actually relates to relationships, I think, as well within the labels. And I know, the bands that we sign, we'd always be, they can contact me, anyone at the label at any time, and just be like, okay, so what's happening with the press in France right now, or what's happening with radio in the UK? I think that's a level of transparency as well, just that kind of working relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I always think about when I think about labels as well is having cohesion within a roster, really like having focus. And I think it's something that we don't see so often anymore. Do you think that's still important going forward? Does a roster need to all complement one another, or can a label just be really good at being a label no matter what genre you fall into?
I think that really varies, but within the independent sector there are some great examples of labels who are real sort of leaders in a particular type of music. If you take sort of Hospital in the drum and bass area, for example, they they're just sort of known as brilliant tastemakers in that genre, and there are fans of the label, and there are club night events that are huge, and there's a YouTube channel that's huge, and a lot of independent labels, particularly in specialist genres, that's the way in which they operate. And Ninja Tune and Warp are other really good examples where they've got a cohesive roster and they've got a sort of fan base as a label. But then other labels are completely not like that at all, like take Cooking Vinyl, for example. They've got every kind of music possible, and that works as a business model too.
Yeah. I think it's just a basis of the label has to be super passionate about the band that they sign, and that can cross genres, you know, 'cause we all love music. So
Sometimes this is really based on the human relationship with the label head and the artist management and artist manager or something like that. But also each label, for example, Universal Music Japan, has the really kind of a really strength of each labels. Like label A has a good relationship with the TV program. Label B has a really good experience to break the band, something like that. So it's really depends on the artist type and the timing and the artist and the label type.
And do you have kind of a policy on this?
Yeah, no, we have. I mean, there are a couple of things that we always look into. I mean, if we sign a band locally, for Benelux, for instance, could be a Belgian act or a Dutch act, and we always look at timing because we've got a small team, and if we sign an artist, we want to go 110% for it, and otherwise we just don't sign it. Sometimes even with, that we really like the music, like the artist, but we just feel like we can't offer them the service they should expect from us. And if that's not the case, then we just don't do it. So that's one of the major things that we really look into, if we can do it.
Yeah, I think that's something we kind of forget, isn't it? I mean, we look at it as a business, but those human relationships are what holds it all together, and I think that's probably the most important part of it. One of the other things that I think is especially spoken a lot about in the UK is the hit rate of A&R. There was a stat that went around a little while ago where it was something like majors had a 4% hit rate, and I think a hit was classed by a platinum album. So, I mean, it's quite a high bar. But I think a lot of people took a lot of flack for that, and people were looking at the A&R departments and being like, well, if you're only getting 4% of great acts, then kind of what's going on? Do you think A&R at labels is right? Is there a way that we need to future-proof it to make a record label future-proof?
I think the notion of a hit is really subjective, and major labels do need a certain amount of platinum selling releases each year to sort of make the numbers add up. But in the independent sector, a hit might be, it totally varies by label, and a success might be 2,000 copies of something, and the margins will be so small that they've made money on that and they're happy and they can develop the act.
I think it depends also on the expectations you have on the artist you sign. I mean, if you think, okay, this is a new band, it's a breaking artist, we really want to sign it, and our goal is to achieve 5,000 albums, and if you achieve that, then it's cool, but you don't have the platinum record, and you're part of the 96% that's not hit the hit rate. So it depends totally on
Yeah, there's a notion in the digital and app world where we're not measuring success by money in the bank anymore. I mean, especially in the digital world, apps are kind of measured on how many active users they have rather than whether they're making money, and we're seeing that more and more. Do we need to change our markers for success? How do we prove that something has been a success? What's the kind of level, the bench that we're looking at?
I suppose we're all being driven by this kind of major label idea, haven't we? I know from our perspective, it would be we'd sign a brand new band on a small deal, but our hit factor would be they've had the BBC introducing session because they had 6 plays in their introducing area. I think it's just a case-by-case basis, and it's the level you're working at as to how you want to appreciate that success, I think.
But I mean, you still need to make money, don't you? So for that, I mean, are you taking a hit on that because you're making profit elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, with all of our deals, we will be looking to take publishing, and then we've got a very active sync team. So that's kind of the balance, I suppose, yeah.
I think sync's really important to a lot of small companies because you might sell almost 0 records, but if you have one really good sync, that'll pay for the next one to be made and everything carries on. So that's a success.
Well, that's kind of something else that's been bandied around. I know I've heard it a lot. Whether going forward, a record label is still records. I mean, we've talked about 360 deals to death, and I don't think we really need to cover that. But going forward, is it about records? Where are we kind of making our money? I know sync's obviously a massive part of that, and sync teams have grown hugely. But I mean, Fred, how are you guys working in that terms? Are records your focus?
It starts with the music. That's where it starts in general. But apart from that, yeah, we look also into other areas. We look into live. We can look into syncs, sponsorships, and with syncs we work closely with sync organizations to make things happen, for instance, and that's also part of the jobs that we do. We just try to get music synced, and so it's not we're only trying to have records being sold or radio airplay on radio being done, but also it's also about looking together with the live agency, what the live perspective is of a band, see how we can grow from small rooms into bigger rooms, into small festivals, bigger festivals. It's an entire plan we made for like 18 months.
As a sort of pie, I mean, how big is the records part of that? How big is the live? Like, what are your kind of percentages on that?
Depends on the artist.
Yeah.
Completely depends on the artist. I mean, sometimes we have an artist where the records are maybe 20%, but some of them are still 80. It depends. It's totally up to the artist.
And how are we moving? How are we moving in Japan? Because like,
Yeah, still, Japan is a really physical heavy market. So I think the key success record label give to the artist is still chart #1 and also like platinum. And also as I talked yesterday, so the Japanese most popular chart still counts only physical. So that is also the reason why we still love physical. But recently something more kind of a brand collaboration or the sync is also the big deal with the artists plus brand collaboration. So those activities are really positive point for the artists we sign.
yeah. And I think, I mean, along those lines, in the journalism world or in magazines and stuff, it's still really important to have a celebrity or an artist on the front cover of a magazine, despite the fact a website's getting thousands and thousands of hits, whereas a magazine's maybe selling 500, maybe, if you're lucky. So, I mean, in terms for artists, is it important for them to have that physical product? Because there's a lot of talk around not even making albums anymore, just having a single release schedule and then touring around that. How important to artists is it to have an album in front of them, like a body of work?
I think it is still really important. I think you kind of, as a small artist, you have to actively always be recording and trying to put stuff online. But I think with your mention of touring as well, you need to have that physical product when you're out playing live, because then people can see you, like you, go and buy your disc. So I think that's still really important.
Yeah, talking about how big physical is in Japan, I mean, it's still surprisingly big in Britain as well. Like, I don't think any of us thought that the CD would really still be selling at this point, but actually it is. And, vinyl has been growing hugely, we all know. And I think the physical market, especially with independents, they do a lot of sort of special products, box sets, collector's items, sort of really beautiful things that fans collect and they pay a lot of money for. And that is still a sort of big chunk of the pie, I think.
I'd also say that really just helps to support the pre-order process as well. The physical aspect of pre-order this and we'll sign it, and then that really encourages the pre-orders.
Yeah, actually, album is a really profitable product actually. So when our business, the royalty made to the artist, so that we can sell the nice price to the 10 songs, and artist can get the 10 royalty 10 times. So, but maybe in the consumer perspective, so I don't know how much album will work for the consumer.
No, we have the same thing with a lot of our artists. I mean, an artist, also when they're playing live, it's good to have physical product out there. And we notice it so many times with bands that we have that after the show they're going to do sign-in sessions at the merch stand, and they're selling loads of albums afterwards, both on vinyl and on CD. So it's still important, especially also in the touring business for artists by themselves. And the vinyl that exploded in the last 2 years, really exploded big time. And we noticed it with a lot of artists.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things I kind of wanted to touch on, it's quite a broad area, but what are the biggest challenges for record companies at the moment? I know, Lara, you've got quite an interesting sort of take on this from the independent
Yeah, we survey our members each year, and that's one of the questions we ask them: what are your biggest challenges? And every year it's the same one that comes out far above the others, which is access to media. For independents, it is so hard to get an artist on TV. I mean, in the UK, there's almost no slots for music on TV, and they inevitably go to all the sort of huge major label pop acts. And then radio as well is really challenging. Radio 1 are really supportive of independent music in terms of the specialist shows, and BBC Introducing is a great way to get new acts onto the radio, but getting onto the sort of main daytime playlists at Radio 1 or any of the commercial stations is so hard for an independent label. And you know, you also need to fork out for pluggers, and sometimes there's just not the money in a budget.
You did notice that in the UK last year as well, where out of the first 100 singles at BBC Radio 1, only 4 from independents, of which 1 was Adele. So that's...
So do you kind of have the same thing over here then, with your challenges?
Media is a challenge, especially on TV. On radio, we're a bit more lucky, also because of a couple of stations that we have that are broadcasting from festivals, and we got a lot of bands that play at festivals, or artists that play at festivals. And we were quite lucky that apart from a lot of new bands, we do have a few established acts that we can work with, and that it's always good to have that as well on your roster.
From your sort of major label background, what were you struggling with? That's quite a loaded question, but...
Yeah, I believe the maybe I've also thought, but the media is challenging. But I hear your story. But we are lucky in Japan because there are a few music programs, music live programs, and also the morning TV programs. Still, the music, also the artist topics as a really key topics. But the challenge is that how we make money via YouTube or something like that. So the YouTube is really works as a media, as also the consuming point. So nowadays, so the teenager don't watch TV and also even radio. So we also promote our repertoire through the YouTube, but they don't really care about the paying to music.
I guess it's quite a tricky one, isn't it, the access to media? I mean, Lara, you brought up that there aren't that many slots. So, I mean, is there a fix for that?
It would just be great if there were more music shows on TV like there used to be, but it doesn't look like things are going in that direction. I find it really strange that to see a band on TV, you have to watch Sunday Brunch or whatever it's called. It's like you get up early and watch them cook. That's really strange.
I'm going to take some questions, because I know we're running to a tight schedule. Has anyone got anything they want to ask?
Thanks. I'm coming from the software world, so I want to ask you, the way software changed from the 90s to the 2000s and now, you see, software was a time where we used to pay for Microsoft XP Windows CDs. There was a time we used to pay $100 or more. And the way that became commoditized is by Apple sort of releasing their OS for free. Now, do you see music sort of going in the same way, but like, for example, today we don't pay for any services that we come on our phones. We don't pay for the apps. We expect different business models to sort of generate revenue. Now, in the music world, do you see sort of that trend, or do you still see record sales, you know, like the focus is still like artists would get like, you know, money from songs? Because from a consumer point of view, the big sort of target for Spotify, Apple Music, it's the, you know, $9.99 a month or $5.99 a month, and that's the big gamble that's taking place. So what do you see as the future in terms of consumers paying for music in a streaming context?
I mean, there's still the free option at Spotify for consumers. Music is still available for free in a way. I don't know for how long that will exist actually, but I mean, of course, there are some thoughts on a much higher level where people are talking to Spotify to see what's going to be the next step. But for the time being, it's still out there. But yeah, I mean, you do notice that streaming on the paid level is getting a bigger chunk out of the streaming in total. That's what we noticed in the last couple of months and years actually. So maybe people are getting used to paying again for music.
And it's obviously sort of capping what they pay at essentially £120 a year. But I mean, I think previously the average spend of a music consumer per year was a lot less than that. So if it continues to get more and more adopted, then it's going in the right direction.
I think as well, if we can bring upsell into those situations, it would be a lot better, wouldn't it? Having the ability to sell merch and tickets and stuff. The importance of that.
Hey guys, how do you all feel about the blockchain, and what are the conversations that you guys are having in your companies? Are they proactive and exciting and feeling like you want to build something with Benji? Are they non-existent, or are they full of fear and cynicism?
Yeah, I think when it comes to Japan, so I think the one thing I've found in the interesting point of the blockchain, because there are many major label in Japan, so more 20 major label here in Japan. So blockchain would work more nicely to those small company, small record labels, to become handling more bigger traffic and royalties. So I think that would be the interesting part of the collaboration with the blockchain Japanese market.
Is it something you're discussing with the indie labels? I mean, has it been brought up yet?
It hasn't really, actually. I think everyone's sort of still getting their head around it. I think it's really early days. We've got a conference on all things digital in April, and I imagine it's going to be a big talking point at that. But so far, not really.
Okay. Anyone else want to say anything? Come on.
And do you see a big difference in how labels are evolving in dance music and in band music, or does it go quite similar? Because I never see, for instance, people buying a techno CD.
Yeah, I mean, every genre and every sort of label in different genres has a different setup. I mean, for example, in the rock world, music sales are really, really low, but gigs and merch are huge. So the labels that work in the rock area have a sort of slightly different model and pie chart of income streams than labels in the dance area.
Anyone else?
So my question is about roles within record labels, particularly with a lot of the questions we have about streaming. And Benji was talking yesterday about how within the next few years we estimate that there's going to be somewhere around 70 million new tracks added to services like Spotify. And there's websites like Forgotify where you can go and stream a song that nobody's ever listened to before. And so I just feel like because scarcity is non-existent, essentially, do you feel like the record labels sort of have to focus less on churning out consumable music and focus more on curation and sort of narrowing down what it is people should be listening to? Because, I mean, there's plenty of music out there to listen to. So I feel like a role of a record label would be more towards marketing and sort of pointing us in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it's something I meant to mention actually. The sort of importance of playlists on streaming services has become a huge thing and a big talking point. And one of the things we're working on at AIM with Sammy is sort of generating a playlist brand for the independent sector. because that curation and that steering people towards your tracks and the tracks that you want them to listen to is so important when there's so much out there.
Anyone else want to say anything?
Hi, I'm interested in the traditional international route used to be that you would license your releases to labels overseas. How important or how possible is it for labels to hold their own rights and actually release their records, globally themselves?
Well, what we do, for instance, with artists that we sign by ourselves is we just talk to them before, okay, which are the territories we're going to be focused on, which are the territories we think we can really have a go, also within our own company. And deal-wise, we just made them custom deals. And if there are territories where we feel we can't have that service provided for the artists that they want to, they can just do them by themselves.
I was just going to say, I think it's like with us, it'd be a case-by-case basis of depending on the release, and then we'd look to either do a licensing deal with another label or look at a specific label services deal that could help us.
Hiya. What are your thoughts on management companies starting to almost form themselves as record labels? Do you think that labels should be looking to either acquire management companies or work together and collaborate with management companies in a different way to function in the future?
For Japan, there are always something, the artist management company have a record label by their own. And sometimes the record label often have a distribution deal with them. So they are making music and the record label distribute music. So, but maybe for digital, the dynamics will change. I don't know what will happen, but there are many cases in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it does change already a lot, actually, with management companies, where if they start their own label, the digital part is already the first thing that they look into, because there's a lot of stuff you can do by yourself. But apart from that, if there's a physical side to it as well, then yeah, they're always looking into different kind of partners, because they need the expertise.
Did you?
You spoke about access to media as the problem a lot of record labels always flag, but I find it slightly frustrating in that I come from a label background and I feel it's sometimes a little bit lazy. I feel people go, oh, we didn't get on the Radio 1 playlist, so we're doomed and there's no hope. Do you not think record labels have a bit of a responsibility to maybe look at kind of more artisan marketing strategies and not just rely on, oh, hopefully we'll get picked up by Jules Holland or the Radio 1 playlist? I mean, it's actually, I think it's where independent labels tend to maybe overperform on major record labels, in that they almost assume they're not going to get that media support, so they have to be more forward thinking.
Yeah, there's a lot of labels that have operated perfectly successfully for years without ever having a Radio 1 playlist or without ever having a record end up in the charts, and you can sort of do things in different ways, and particularly through harnessing fans on social media and that kind of thing. But you still can't overstate the importance of radio in sort of breaking an act and making a release successful. It has a huge impact. And in fact, that's also, in sort of Radio 1's defense, for example, it's sometimes people are taking releases to them where they're just not ready for sort of radio play across the country. That you need to be at a certain point where you can capitalize on that play, and sometimes an artist or a label isn't.
I think that's probably where the label's responsibility is all-encompassing as well. You need to be pushing your bands, okay, get out live, let's build that story. Make sure you're always speaking to your fans on social media, let's build that story, and then it is all part of the aspects coming together to build your case for radio plays, never mind playlist.
Yeah, it's true. It's a combination of all those aspects: social media, radio, but also other online platforms, retail, etc. It's a combination.
Hi. Can you give any examples from the independent sort of label side of amazing campaigns that haven't relied on radio, like actual recent examples?
No. I don't know. I think if Darren's still in the room, I don't know if he's around, but he's brilliant at sort of digital campaigns where, hello, there he is. He'll do it for you. No,
what, campaigns that have run for a long time without radio support?
Yeah.
Well, the Run the Jewels one's doing all right.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently. My BBC colleague to my left has just told me that was A-listed at 6. I've got nothing. I've had like 3 hours sleep. I'm sorry. I'm running on
Sorry, my bad. Put you on the spot. But no, I mean, radio is really a huge part of it still.
And on that crowning moment, I'm afraid that's running out of time. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Liz, thank you
Thank
again. Taka, Alison, Laura, Fred, thank you very much indeed for your time and for sharing with us today.